We are a little more than a quarter way through Season 4 of Young Justice and well into our second story arc. This week's episode, entitled The Lady and the Tigress, was no exception to the quality we've seen so far this season. Let's take a couple minutes to break down this week's episode, talk about what's going on, and dig into our non-spoiler review. Now, before we dive in though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. Also, the big giveaway. We had a PlayStation 5 to give away at 25,000 subscribers. All you need to do to get in on our giveaway is be a subscriber and leave us a comment. Also, while you're at it, check out the free 7-day trial to Skillshare down below. This is a spectacular way to develop all the superhero skills you need for the ongoing war on crime, all while not digging too deep into your pocket. Plus, it helps the channel, so we really appreciate it. Well, I have to say we had another great episode of Young Justice this week in episode 7 entitled The Lady and the Tigress. Now, starting off, I will say, this dive into literary references is pretty awesome, and I actually read this in school. This particular one, like the previous ones, kind of gives some insight into where this episode was going, so if you are familiar with The Lady and the Tiger, you might actually have a couple of clues before you even start. Now, like we said, this is going to be spoiler-free, but I have gotten some feedback from you guys that suggests you might not mind spoilers, so I've put a poll over on the community tab. Let me know what you really want. One of the biggest things from this episode, I will say, is the reveal of who the traitor is. Now, I'm not going to give it away, but we've been stewing on it for a while, and if you were paying attention, there were actually a couple of clues and even callbacks to previous episodes. So, I really like that part of the show, but I have to say, I wasn't surprised at all, and I actually called it. Now, being a big comic book fan, the version of Cassandra Cain on the show has been pretty interesting. In the comics, she's taken up the role of Batgirl and Orphan, and I have wanted to know a bit more about this since she's been on the show. And the view into Orphan's life plays big in this episode and ties directly into the history of the show. We find out a ton about Cassandra, her history, and how she actually ended up leaving the League and joining the team. The flashback scenes in this episode call way back, and being a hardcore fan of the show and knowing its history totally pays off. More importantly, we get some details on a classic DC story that was also integrated into the show and ties directly to Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl. I think you might know which one I'm talking about. We also may get a little reference to one of the most eagerly anticipated characters, Jason Todd, but no reveals. Just an official acknowledgement of his existence, which is kind of a big deal. Now, we knew Barbara was chairbound for a while, but we actually get to see that play out. And the integration of this, along with several other storylines, is pulled off rather well. Now, Tigress is still the main focus of this arc and this episode, but honestly, we really got to know both Onyx and Cassandra in this episode, but also Jade. Jade has always been a wild card on the show, and as we have learned, she has a lifetime of reasons to be guarded and careful with her heart. She doesn't have a lot of loyalty, but she is a Croc sister, and in this episode, that gets put front and center. This particular story arc does leave us with a bit of a cliffhanger at the end, so clearly we've got another pretty big chapter, and if you're familiar with the Lady and the Tiger story, it actually comes together perfectly. Now, we actually do take some time to return to Mars this week to add some partial conclusion to the situation that went on there. There is some pretty big implications of future plot details for this season involving Darkseid's forces that are revealed this week, and as we saw in previous episodes, his hands are all over the situation on Mars. Now, we still have no resolution with Connor Kent, or honestly the Legion, and I feel like this is probably for a good reason, and some of the teases this week may make that apparent. Additionally, clearly M'gann is not doing well at this point, and given her level of power throughout the show, I am genuinely worried where she will go. Grief really does do terrible things to people, and M'gann is completely consumed by her grief. Now, all the typicals for the show continue to excel this week. The animation from Studio Mir is really stepped up from last year, and I am totally digging it. A ton of action actually showcases that this week. Also, not just the voice cast shines, but the sound. There's a battle on Mars this week, and one effect actually caused me to jump out of my seat. This is an area that's not typically called out, but I do think it's something the show does pretty well. Once again, the action was solid, and the reveals were all well played, especially the callback to Season 2. Again, if you were a fan, this paid off well, and I have to say, bravo. All in all, I think this is another great episode, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Can't wait to see where the cliffhanger ending takes us next week, and the crew coming back from Mars may impact this story in particular, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, I wanted to remind you guys, if you want to keep these reviews spoiler-free or not spoiler-free, please check out that poll on the community page. If people prefer a spoiler-oriented recap review, I'd be glad to do it. So, what did you guys think? How did you like this week's episode of Young Justice? And how do you feel about the integration of both Cassandra Cain and Barbara Gordon's storyline on Earth-16? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you press like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you're not going to get any updates. Peace.